reason we do this is because the puppet can animate different parts of the head you want it to be able to move. It's not a static object like in Nightmare Before Christmas. They were like ping pong balls that just were replaced one at a time, which is technologically a huge advancement. And now we took it a step further with 3D printing. And you can see the last part when it breaks apart Coraline's face. That's the printed face that gets replaced for Frank. Okay, now we're going back and forth in time. So that was from Coraline. Now we jump into Kubo, head of hair and fur, working on Kubo's hair. And hair's become a really important part of Laika films. It's become, ever since Coraline's blue hair, it's something that has been really critical. Here's the costume. So getting into costume design, these are the finished versions of Coraline's costumes. So she had 7 different versions for the movie, and we probably had an average of about 4 of these costumes per puppet. So 4 times 7, about 28 different Coraline puppets or so. And the reason why we had so many different puppets is that we could animate, remember I mentioned about 50 stages? We could animate Coraline in 5 or 6 different scenes at once, 5 different animators working on the scenes. And this keeps us on task to get an idea of what the animators were working on. Costume. This was, skipping ahead now to the box toys. Lord Portly Rind. This was an initial concept for his costume, and the notes that Deborah Cook, who's head of costumes out, when the Mechadrobe, we called it the largest at 5 feet because I think Aardman had one puppet that was that size. But now here we are with this 18-foot tall puppet. His hands, the giant skeleton, if his hands are spread apart, they'd be 24 feet. It was basically attached to the building. You can see the green rig in the back. And it took about 4 or 5 months to animate his 30 or 40 seconds on screen. It took a long time. The usual time for an animator to move a puppet is about 4 seconds. So you can see what can happen in this situation when you're dealing with this large. But when you play around with something of that scale, you need to have something that big. This is going back all the way production time, 2007, and Coraline's house. You can see Coraline, she's on the house is breaking apart right there. And then again, going ahead to Malcolm Lamont animating on Kubo. Those lanterns all have practical lighting, LED lights in the lanterns. So when an animator takes a shot, I think we have right here, this is Travis Knight animating Kubo. When he takes a shot, you can see his frame grab right there. We use a program called Dragon Frame. When he takes a shot, it gets saved as a 5K image, a really, really large image that looks, because you need to have that kind of clarity when we're shooting at 12 to 20 feet. So once that shot is taken, a 5K image, it's then saved to a hard drive, and immediately one of the other visual effects animators can start working on post-production things like lighting or rig removal, any kind of things that they need to do to sweeten the shot. So that's, again, we're all kind of working again simultaneously. More animators. This time working with Monkey. You can see Monkey, again, silicone material and a removable face. 3D printer. We have, I think, 15 or so of these. We have powder printers. These look like this. In action. This is printing some props for the box toys. And it'll be done in about an hour or so. Not this slide, I hope. That'd be boring. But basically, and it just kind of recirculating and powder. Once the powder's done, once it's done, it comes off the printer. The faces look like this when they're finished. And again, going back to Coraline, same technology. It's advanced a lot since the days, like for instance, since 2007, we could only print in black and white. So each one of these Coraline faces had to be hand-painted to match, and including freckles put on the character on the puppet. And you can see how long it might take to go from the upper left down to the smile. That's several frames. On Paranorman, we actually started using a color printer. That was our big advancement. Color powder printer. So now we don't have to paint each one of the faces individually. We actually can print in color. This is what they look like. The faces look like when they come off the 3D printer. They're actually removing the filaments and things like that. All the materials powder with high pressure air, like an air gun, that's getting rid of all the little imperfections. And So that's part one once they come off the printer. A face like that takes about an hour to print, but you can print about 40 or so in an hour. And then on the right side, you can see being cleaned up with different brushes and things like that. And then there's, basically you have a powder printed face, but if you dropped it, it would probably crack or break pretty easily. So we needed something to kind of tighten everything up and hold it all together, almost give it a coating. And so, another animated sequence here. This is from Paranormal.
Awesome!
It's on our audio a lot. But basically, dip this in water, super glue mix. Every single face, water, super glue, then it goes to a drying area, and then magnets are added to the back because they can attach to the metal armature. Does that all make sense so far? So every single face within 20, if it's 1 second of animation, 1 second of dialogue, that could be 24 or more changes.
Are the back sides like concave, or is it like a wedge?
It's actually, so it's like hollow on the inside, and then there's 4 spots for tiny rare earth magnets, which are like really small round magnets that get put on the back, generally 4 for the face. Okay, so again, skipping, you can even see from 2012 to where we are here, new movie, finished faces, and then taking like a black pencil and just kind of clearing out the face. This is for those sisters, those evil sisters, and a little bit of touch-up. You can see like the facial makeup. And ironically, if you've seen the movie, these characters, their mouths don't move because they're considered masks. That was a really important part of Kubo and any of one of our movies, is to do our background research and figure out where puppets and where the idea of puppets fit in the culture in Japan and puppet storytelling. And so these faces that didn't move, there was an added sort of element of creepiness maybe to these characters because their faces didn't move. This is what it looks like when you're replacing a face on a puppet and animating. So you can see the animator going back and forth, going to that tray, picking up a face that's probably a quarter of a second of dialogue. Okay, now the creation of a face in computer. I mentioned before when we call 3D not 3D as in the 3D glasses, but actually creating something in 3D. This is a really good. I don't have a cursor, but this is a good example of the entirety of the movie, how we create these movies. On this right monitor, upper left side, you can see a black and white version of Monkey, right? You can see that? That's called the animatic. And you can imagine that actually animates. Somebody drew that pencil animation basically through the entire movie. Gives us an idea of flow, gives us an idea of facial expressions and mouth movements and things like that. So that's the initial thing called the animatic. And below that animatic looks like almost like a 3D or a CG version of the film, which is. So that's to give an idea of more technical, maybe more frames, again, to be able to see what we need to print for this bit of dialogue. Okay, following so far? And then here, this animator, he's an animator, he's a 3D animator, not stop motion animator. He's creating a program called Maya. He's taking a keyframe from one of those monkey faces, pulling it on his monitor on the left side, and building the face in the computer. And what he's doing now is the last part, which is to create the 3D printed faces. So once he creates that face on the left side, he'll send it to the 3D printer, which will then create the face and print the face. Powder gives it a little more. We have a little more variation with powder.